Welcome to Unclouded Eye. I'm Ashley Brooks.
And I'm Ty Gowan.
And we have your astrological forecast and some cosmic chit-chat.
Cool.
We're back in person.
It feels right, Ash.
Yeah. I mean, we were in person for the live episode, but like for a regular episode, feels good.
It does feel good. It feels we're back in our space, which, you know, I like setting it up in the morning. It's nice. This is our studio, but it's also, you know, a communal space for gaming and dinners and whatever else I can like cram into my house, you know?
It's fun. It has multi-purposes.
And speaking of which, we're now in November, and so that means the citrus tree has to come back inside, and she's now on life support. We got one over the summer. How great is that?
That's a giant one. You got a few.
Growing lemons in Maine, man.
Wow, I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We got to do this kind of like life support thing, though, where she's all decked out in lights for the winter.
So many lights in there, yeah.
Confuse her that she wouldn't die outside.
Yeah.
But we are right away from Halloween here. So I was just wanted to bring up Halloween costumes. Do you have any like big winners from your... I'm going to say like your childhood. Like what was like a big one for you?
Okay. So as you know, my mom is a very talented seamstress.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember she didn't make my costume every single year because there were some things that I would want to buy or whatever. But there was one year that I really wanted to be Garfield. But she was like, I don't know if I can quite pull that off. But she's like, I think I can make an Odie costume.
You got an Odie costume?
So I was Odie from the Garfield comics. And she made me this like yellow jumpsuit with the brown spots. And then the head kind of came up over my head. And like, so Odie's head was out here. And there was a tongue that came over and it had like a spotted drool on it, like coming off of it.
Oh my God.
And it was so cool. But it was really hard to get in and out of. So... you had to go to the bathroom.
That was it.
It was a nightmare.
You're locked in.
Yeah. So just no beverages that night. But yeah, that was so cool. It was just such a unique costume.
Your mom made me in college. She made me a spandex Flash costume.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite things that I own. Like,
yeah,
I probably can't fit in it anymore, but that needs to go into a shadow box.
Absolutely. That should be framed.
I loved it so much.
Yeah. And then when I was an adult, she made me a Link costume from Legend of Zelda.
You're still upstairs in our living room with your Link costume on.
Yeah, I got
on the wall.
I got the shield and the sword.
Mm-hmm.
Like I bought those online, but then she made me like the tunic and the little hat, and I had a short little blonde wig that I wore.
Did you put extra large blue eyes in? Because you have blue eyes now, but I remember it was like...
the circle lenses?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wanted it to look kind of like Japanime vibes. So
they did. I remember too, it was shocking too, because you had your eye color lenses in, like something really close to the crystal blue you have. So it took me a minute to be like enhanced. You know, like these are 20% bigger than Ash's normal eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about you? What was your favorite as a kid?
I think spur of the moment, the one that's coming to mind right now, because my mom had a rule where it was nothing super scary. Like I couldn't do anything like
bloody or gory.
I always want to do something scary too.
Yeah.
But my mom really would help me out a ton if it came from a book.
Ooh.
And I had all these, they weren't like wishbone books, but they were all like nerfed classics or whatever. I had a whole stack of them, like Ivanhoe, The Man in the Iron Mask, The Cask of Amontillado.
Wow.
But they were like written for like maybe third or fourth graders.
Okay.
Like you just kind of distilled it down. And so I think two of my favorite costumes from like the book series when my mom was like really helping me get stuff done were one year I was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And so I had this like a doctor's vest that she like stitched everything together to look different on both sides. I thought that was so cool. And then there's another year where I was so proud of myself because I kind of put a lot of this together and she helped me, but I was the Invisible Man and I had wrapped myself in gauze and sunglasses. And like, it was also me starting to think of like Halloween in Maine, like you need to wear as many clothes as possible.
Yeah. And a coat can like ruin a whole costume. So
unless it's built in, like the Invisible Man.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. Did the kids know what you were as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and the Invisible Man?
Absolutely not.
I can't imagine they would.
I remember I was actually in our producer's class when I was the Invisible Man, and everyone thought that I was a mummy, you know, mummy in a trench coat with a fedora. I was like, yeah,
so uncultured.
Okay, I tried.
Oh man. I remember one year I was the Pink Panther and everyone thought I was a bunny. And I remember like by the like 10th time someone said it, I remember trick-or-treating and like the guy at the door was like, "Oh, are you a nice little bunny?" And I held up my cat tail and I'm like, "Bunnies don't have tails like this."
I'm sick of this.
I like lost it. I was like polite until that point. I'm like, it's not what I am.
The general public is ruining my Halloween.
Yeah. Oh my God. All right. You want to talk about the forecast?
Yeah. What's going on this week?
Not much.
Oh, okay.
Can you imagine? I feel like last week it was bananas, so much happening. This is the quietest week I think we might have ever had on the podcast.
There was a week, what was it, two or 3 weeks ago, where it was 2 days a week, everything was happening on those days.
It was clumped up.
Clumpy, yeah.
Yeah, there's only 3 transits total this week. So actually that's very nice for everyone. We're going to get kind of a collective sigh of relief after Halloween, and this is election week in the United States, so I think we all deserve that.
For reasons.
So scary.
Yeah.
Ooh, Halloween's over, but the fear continues.
The fear starts now. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's dive in.
So Monday, November 4th, we have the sun trining Saturn at 12:36 p.m. Eastern time. So the sun trining Saturn, the sun is currently in Scorpio, and let me zoom in a little bit. It's at 12 degrees Scorpio, and Saturn is at 12 degrees Pisces. So this is a really pleasant transit that we feel all day on Monday. And this is really good for getting work done, staying focused, and having like the willpower and dedication to kind of show up and get tasks done. So you might find that it's a little bit easier to chip away at things on Monday. You could feel maybe more motivated, or at least you could align to that feeling a little bit easier. And in general, it's just a good positive transit for work and being maybe more focused on details and noticing like small things and kind of chipping away at goals.
I think my coworkers will love to hear that.
Yeah, it's a good Monday energy for sure, because it makes you feel like diligent and responsible. And it's like some days you might like feel that way, but it's still kind of a drag. Like you're like, I can focus on this work, but I'd rather be at the beach. But this day you're like, no, I feel good. I feel like I'm accomplishing things. I'm proud of myself.
I'm going to need that because I had Thursday and Friday off to celebrate Halloween. I wanted to give myself a nice long weekend.
I love that.
Which means it's going to stack up on Monday.
Yeah,
so I'm going to need to be able to chip away.
Yeah, like you might be feeling refreshed after your extended weekend and ready to kind of hit the ground running when you get to work.
I better be, because I've got the Halloween energy around me. That's the whole point of why I'm taking this time off for me.
I mean, it's like the best holiday for people like us. Yeah.
Can I pause you real quick?
Yeah.
I want to tell you a favorite memory I have about Halloween.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
I'm so sorry.
This is a short segment because there's not much happening. So
I just think you'd love this, and I welcome you to join me sometime. Okay. But I have these woods behind my house that have trails through them along the river. And 2 years ago, my nephew came over and he was dressed up as a ghost for Halloween, and they were gone before the sun really set, which was, I don't know, it kind of opened me up a little bit. I was like, oh, I got to get in the Halloween mood. So I went out through the woods, Ash, and it was a little creepy because I was out there as the sun was setting, but it was one of those days where it was kind of cloudy and the sun hit the clouds in just such a way that it made everything purple and the trees were black. And it was at sunset, and I had this like really spiritual Halloween moment, where
amazing.
I'm walking through the woods and I'm like, this is the essence, and this is why I love it so much. It was just ooky, creepy, but also felt cozy and perfect,
Oh my God.
A purple sky
I
with
want
black
to
silhouette.
bottle that feeling.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
so when I think of Halloween or whatever, that's where I go back to. Why I'm trying to take this time off, because I want to like forcibly recreate it again.
I just love Halloween so much. Like just going through people's neighborhoods and seeing like ghosts and witches, it just feels like I'm home. I don't know.
I get it too.
It's like all the weirdness that I feel every day. It's like suddenly it's celebrated.
Yeah, well put. Well put. There's no other door that I would choose in The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Sorry about that. That was
Don't
a tangent.
be sorry. Stop it. Okay. Wednesday, November 6th. So we get a day off for the election. No transits. Wednesday, November 6th, we have Mercury trining the North Node at 9:31 p.m. Eastern time. And this is another positive transit. So far, so good. And currently, Mercury is at 4 degrees of Sagittarius. It entered Sagittarius last week. And the North Node is at 4 degrees of Aries. So they're both in fire signs, which means that they get along. This is a nice harmonious trine between the two planets/placements. So Mercury trine the North Node is really good for new ideas coming in, especially ideas that can get us kickstarted on projects that could be like very important for the next phase of our lives.
Well, we need to get together and do some podcast planning.
I think so. Yeah, because we have a lot of ideas for next year. And so this could be a really good time to do it. And we'll feel it for most of the day on Wednesday. So, maybe hop
Meet
on
up,
Skype or something.
Absolutely. We'll Skype.
Yeah, I think it's a good day for that because it can really get you started. Like the North Node is all about like uncharted terrain, places you haven't gone yet. And it can feel a little apprehensive, like there can be some apprehension with it or some slight fear.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's like that feeling of like, oh, this is all new to me. And Mercury governing like the mind and communication and ideas. It's great for writing and for speaking. So podcasting. Mercury is kind of the ruler of podcasts.
We're putting that date on our schedules to get together. I was about to call the date out and I was like, I don't know what day that is.
November 6th,
That's
Wednesday.
November 6th. Okay,
yeah.
So we're getting together.
Yeah, we are. Okay, so that's a great transit to utilize for planning, for ideas, for anything related to like business or writing.
So now I have 2 favorite celestial bodies from this podcast. We've got Chiron, who I'm guessing is unaspected this week. And then we got the North Node as my new second favorite.
Yeah, the North Node is also called the Dragon's Head. Remember?
Yeah.
We talked about that a while ago. So the North Node is a point on the moon's orbit. It's not actually a body in the sky, but it is a really cool placement.
Yeah, it's the Indiana Jones node.
Yeah, I believe in your birth chart, you have Jupiter conjunct your North Node, which makes sense because the North Node wouldn't feel scary to you. It would feel lucky and benevolent.
Of course it's lucky. I don't see it any other way.
Yeah, that's your experience of it. Some people find it scary, but ultimately the North Node is where you're going to evolve the most and kind of like your soul's journey or mission in this life.
Let's just hang out there.
Yeah, let's just live in that.
That's how you reach nirvana is you just spend your entire time in North Node.
According to esoteric astrology, that's true.
Really?
I mean, yeah, like
a dart like
following the North Node is like how you evolve and like break karmic patterns.
Oh my God. There's going to be like a Patreon class about that.
I should do that. Yeah. Okay, Saturday, November 9th, we have our last transit of the week. Venus is squaring Neptune at 8:15 a.m. Eastern Time. This one's a little sticky. It's not terrible. It doesn't feel terrible in the moment, but it can lead to terrible.
Okay.
So let me explain what I mean.
Extrapolate.
Extrapolate. Venus is at 27 degrees Sagittarius. Neptune's at 27 degrees Pisces and is retrograde. So Venus square Neptune, these planets are hitting that tense 90-degree aspect in the sky. And this can create a lot of confusion. Neptune in negative aspects creates a lot of fog, a lot of confusion.
Just like in the runes.
Yes, exactly. And that confusion is hitting our relationships because it's Venus.
Okay.
So there could be a lot of confusion. You could maybe think somebody's going to do something and then they totally surprise you and do something else. You could feel like, oh, this is meant to be, like this person's meant to be, my boyfriend or whatever. And it's like, no, probably not. That's not a good idea. Or like you might, think your friend is, you might be ignoring red flags, like in friendship, in romance, and in areas of your life that are kind of governed by like the Venusian social energy. So yeah, there could be some confusion. There could be some misunderstandings and over idealizing situations in a negative way.
Okay.
So the thing is, like, this might not feel bad as when you're in it. Like, you might feel a little confused, but you're more likely to be kind of like either impacted emotionally by other people's energy, or you might be kind of ignoring those red flags.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay, I feel like I was stumbling a little bit.
No. It to me, it sounds like you have the opportunity to like stick your foot in the mud today.
Yeah, there's definitely some relationship stuff you might do or say something you regret later on, and you might feel like things feel faded or just really intensely drawn to other people, but maybe it's not for the best. And yeah, there just could be some toxic stuff coming up in relationships.
Look out for the landmines. I think would be a Thursday type of thing. But it's Saturday, sorry. But it's hard too because with the fogginess that you talk about, is that Neptune?
Yeah, Neptune. So it's going to be really hard to see. That's why this is a little bit of a sticky transit, because you're not going to be able to know till it's over. But the good news is it's easier to see in other people. So something that isn't like, let's say your friend keeps like going out with this guy, that's bad news. Like if they're on that day, they're like, I'm going to like make it serious with this person. You probably would see that that's not good for them. But if you're that person who's dating that toxic guy, then you probably wouldn't see that in yourself.
Gotcha. So binoculars work, mirrors don't.
I love that.
Okay. Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Yes. Yes. So look out for your friends. Get a second opinion. You know, if something feels really good, maybe talk to some friends. Be like, okay, like, does this seem okay that, you know, this person has blown me off every day this week and yet I still want, you know, to be with them? Like, is this smart? You know, just getting a second opinion.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. Second opinion Saturday.
Yep, exactly. So that is this week. It's pretty good. There's just a little sticky blip on Saturday. And again, you might not get hit by it entirely, you know, if you don't have any of those toxic people around you, but you might be more likely to kind of encounter them out in the world.
You know, it's nice when we do this podcast and you bring up topics like that, because in my mind, I kind of have these choice days and no choice days. You know, like if you're making a big decision in any aspect of your life, does Ash deem this as a good day to make a huge decision?
Yep.
Or can it just wait for a moment, you know?
Literally any day of the week except for Saturday, go for it.
Oh, because that's sweet. Okay, cool.
Yep. That's what I say.
Well, ready to jump into this topic?
Yes.
So it's a broad one, but it's something that I find fascinating, and I was trying to find a good way to, I guess, mine a little bit deeper into this topic. But this week we're going to be talking about radiation, which we really didn't know existed in the world until 1895. But I wanted to know a little bit about what did people think it was before we discovered like decaying atoms, right?
Yeah.
Because we learned that it existed, but it is such a potent force on this planet. Like it's been around forever, and it's like been decaying for there's radioactive places everywhere, right?
Could you define that for maybe somebody who doesn't know exactly what radioactivity is?
Oh, yeah, sure. So basically, when atoms decay, certain atoms or whatever, they shoot out particles, alpha and beta particles. And those particles are radiating from the atom. And because of that, I don't want to say phenomena because it's a science, but because that happens on some very specific elements, it can create power or X-rays, you know, like we can harness it like we do with nuclear energy. However, it happens naturally occurring without humans harnessing it, you know, so like there can be uranium deposits just sitting down in the ground for the last 100 million years, and it's not going to bother anybody until we dig it up. But cultures have been digging for a really long time, you know, and so without knowing that there's an invisible poisonous force affecting your body, I wanted to know like what maybe some people might have thought was happening, you know?
Yeah.
Honestly, because I'm terrified about this. I know you're going to remember the episode because we watched it together, but there's an episode of House.
Oh my God.
Do you remember, you know, the one I'm talking about, where the kid finds the uranium chunk at the junkyard and it kills him?
Yeah, he just like wore like a cool piece of jewelry or something. Was that what it was? Or
it was a cool rock. Yeah. And so like he put it on a chain and he wore it around and it was uranium.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Oh my God, that show made me so paranoid about everything. I'm like, I got it all. I've got that. I've got that weird disease.
So much lupus.
I am banned from WebMD.
Yeah, honestly, like we all should be. Just go see your real doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's why it was interesting, this radiation topic, because I wanted to go back and see like what were people doing beforehand. And I found some interesting articles about it, but also came to the realization that because they didn't know what it was, they wouldn't have been writing down like, you know, like I found a cool rock today. 4 months later, everyone's in my village is getting
they
sick.
might not have put those pieces together.
Right. I wanted to see if it was a curse, but that was basically what I was looking for.
Right.
But again, with what you said, the pieces being put together don't add up until I found a really cool example. And so I'm going to share it with you.
Okay.
But so this article I found was explaining the dangers of radon in early mines because humans have been mining forever. We're digging down. But nowadays it's done with like proper ventilation and a lot of like really safety standards. But what I didn't realize is that in these old mines, radon's a problem. And like a lot of people now have like radon mitigation units in their basements because radon comes from decaying uranium in the soil and it gets kind of trapped. And as a gas, it would get stuck in these unventilated mines, like in the dust in the air or whatnot. And so in 1530, a man named Paracelsus, I'm so sorry, Paracelsus, I think that's your name. So he was a Swiss physician and alchemist, which I think is so cool. And he saw this really interesting phenomenon happening in these mines, and he started calling it wasting sickness.
Oh, wow.
So basically it would be miners would get overwhelmed with lethargy and like they would get really, really sick really quick. And the wasting sickness that he assigned to these mines has such a cool alchemical name. He called it the mala metallorum or whatever, the mala metallorum. Basically, he thought that the disease was specifically linked to miners who were digging for metals.
Okay.
Right? So it's basically what it was, and they wouldn't realize this until 1879, but it's lung cancer is what they were getting. It wasn't the mala metallorum. It was,
okay, yeah.
They're breathing in radon, and it's getting trapped in their lungs. So it's, I think later that same century, a metallurgist named George Agricola was the first to connect these dots and say, well, this metallorum disease is happening because we don't have ventilation in the mines. And so that's when they started adding safety procedures, which is really cool.
Better than never, I guess, but
for real. But
poor people.
They knew that the digging was dangerous, right? But they had no clue that radiation was the real cause of it. So it's now, let's just jump forward because that was really the only like good like curse type of like story that I could find.
I want to say one thing. So I just looked up the date of when uranium was discovered, just out of curiosity. So Uranus was discovered in 1781, and then uranium was discovered in 1789. So it's interesting because a lot of the things that Uranus governs over astrologically kind of correspond with uranium.
And you told me that's how planets get named, right?
Yeah, there's
what's happening.
Yeah, there's like this explosive quality to uranium. Like it can be used in like, it's kind of this chaotic sort of substance. And that's definitely Uranian energy. So
that's really cool.
Super interesting. Also, uranium glass. Like, did you see that ever at like antique shops?
Oh my gosh.
People were eating off of those plates.
Absolutely. Which I actually looked up. Not as dangerous as you might think.
Okay.
Not a great idea, to do, but like the way that it's processed or whatever, it's radioactive, but it's I think it's mostly beta particles, which can be, I think those are the bigger ones that can be blocked by keeping uranium glass behind a glass of its own. So
you probably don't want to eat your dinner on it, but it's okay to keep in your house.
No, but like, Emily, we've been doing this type of stuff. Like I know that the crystalware my Nana had that used to have like M&Ms in had lead in it. Like I know that as an adult now, to be like, oh, that's why the crystal sparkled so bright, like. So all these old heirloom pieces that like we're learning about nowadays of like, oh, I love it because it glows under black light. Yeah. It's like, okay. We got to look that up.
Yeah. All right. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that was great. What I was saying is we're going to jump forward now away from like what did people think it used to be to 1895 when it gets harnessed by the first time by Wilhelm Röntgen. And he discovers the X-ray.
Ooh, how useful.
So he'd been experimenting with electrical currents and a substance called barium for a while to see how adding electricity would affect that substance. And it was a experiment that was done behind a block light. Like it had to be done in like a dark zone. But what he was realizing during his experiments is that light must be getting through somehow. Because it was affecting his experiment in a certain way. And he's like, there's no way that we could be doing it unless the light's coming from inside. So eventually he was able to figure out what the effect that was happening. And I think it was within a year, he took the first X-ray photo of his wife's skeletal hand.
Cool.
And realized that that's what this was doing. And so we have a picture of that. I think our producer just threw it out there.
Oh, nice.
But I grabbed a quote from it and it said, "It seemed at first a new type of invisible light was discovered. It was clearly something new, something unrecorded." And he actually goes on to throw back to a previous episode that in 1901, he wins one of the first Nobel Prizes for his discovery.
I mean, he should have. That's such a useful invention.
I thought so. And it goes like we were going to build from the X-ray. Antoine Becquerel gets credited for discovering that the phenomena is a lot bigger than just X-rays alone. There's other elements out here that are capable of doing exactly that. And then it's the Curies who dive further, and they actually coined the term radioactivity by discovering the elements polonium and radium. And so both Becquerel and both of the Curies are also Nobel Prize winners.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So like we talked about a little bit at the start, like that's a big, overview of what radiation is and who discovered it. But nowadays we use it for everything between medicine and war. Like it's a part of our life. We're living in a post-atomic era. But it's just interesting to see how strikingly different it's being used in just the last 100 years. Like we only discovered it in 1895, and now we've gone light years ahead of like what using atomic power can do.
Yeah, that's so cool. Love it.
So we have a radioactive chart for you this week. Are you ready to do it?
Yes, I am.
So I've got November 7th, 1867. Warsaw, Poland. And we're going to do 12 p.m. Is the time of birth, but I don't, just because, again,
seems very specific, or not very non-specific. So,
right. So I wouldn't put a ton of faith on that time of day.
There's something that would be really cool if that's true, which I will address. But like 12 p.m., like there's probably very few babies that are born right at 12 p.m.
Right at 12 p.m. And also we know that like in the 1860s
in Poland.
Yeah. I think I have a low degree of confidence that they know when this person was born.
Yeah. Like I have a lot of Polish ancestors, and it's really hard to track them like beyond, like even like their names and birth dates, like beyond like the 1880s. So yeah, like the fact that we even know this is
a big one.
It's a big one.
Gotcha.
Okay. So this person is a Scorpio. We're in Scorpio season, which is why Ty chose them, I believe.
That's right.
We have their moon in Pisces, and if this birth time is true, they would be a Capricorn rising. So very first thing I noticed is they do have a stellium in Scorpio. So the sun is in Scorpio, but it's actually not in that stellium. It's like outside. So for anyone who's missed an explanation of what a stellium is, it's 3 or more planets in the same sign in somebody's chart. So that means that they are all clumped up together in the sky when this person was born, and they actually kind of act as a unit together. You could think of it almost like box cars on a train, like they're all hooked together. They don't really do anything without involving the others. So in this case, we have Saturn, Venus, and Mars conjunct in Scorpio. And if the birth time is true, those would also be conjunct this person's midheaven, which would mean that their legacy is very strong. Like their legacy, like they're a very well-known person in their field.
Well, I think that's fair to say.
I mean,
we're talking about. Yeah,
exactly. And specifically, they're known for like their hard work ethic. Like that would be something that we would see here. But
maybe they were born at noon then, because like that's why I picked them. You know, like so.
If they were even born like in that hour, this would be pretty much the same. So, for the most part,
I'm gonna give it to this person.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Scorpio stellium, they also have a pattern in their chart called kite, which is a very helpful and positive aspect pattern to have in your chart. So, if you are watching on YouTube, I'll try to explain it for those of you who are just listening, but there is this triangular pattern in the chart that is connecting their sun in Scorpio, their moon in Pisces, and their Uranus in Cancer, which is very interesting that Uranus is involved considering what we just talked about with uranium and radiation. And I'm assuming this person's tied in with that because they're who we're talking about. So there's a nice grand trine between those three. And then for that kite pattern, we have the moon and Uranus are both sextiling down to Pluto in Taurus, and then Pluto is opposing the sun. So a little convoluted, all of that to say that this kite pattern awards them a great deal of luck in life, but also there's some hard work involved because of the opposition between the sun and Pluto. So this person does have a great deal of passion, and they also just have a very unique and inventive mind, I would imagine, with this trine to Uranus. There's a great deal of like being able to look at things from new perspectives, not seeing things the way that other people do, but in a way that doesn't necessarily ostracize them from society. They're still like well-adjusted and in society. But then we have the opposition between the sun and Pluto. So the sun's at 14 degrees Scorpio, opposing down to Pluto at 15 degrees Taurus. And this would make them coming up against a lot of different challenges in their life. But this is the type of person, like people with this in their chart, they fall down 6 times, they get up, you know.
Yeah, we've talked about the strife charts.
Exactly. And they don't have, like, they have some squares to Jupiter, and then they have this opposition, and they have one other square that's a generational one. They're not like loaded with issues in their chart. Like they've got a lot of really benefic, pleasant transits. But then there's this opposition, which would make them come up against a lot of challenges, like possibly from society, just because Pluto's a generational thing. There would have been a lot of like maybe red tape that they had to deal with. Then all the squares down to Jupiter is interesting too, because we see a lot of natural luck, but it's almost like at some point the luck could have run out. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's a way that we could.
I'm interpreting it and it breaks my heart a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Mercury is trining Neptune. So this person did have like a sort of intuitive quality to them.
But like what we talked about earlier too, with Neptune being foggy, like in Mercury trining that, would that interrupt their communication style or like?
Well, a trine's positive. So Neptune's helping them in this way.
We lose the malefic aspects of Neptune in that type of situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Neptune's always foggy, but when it's working well, like when it's working for you, it makes you able. So some of like the ways that Neptune would positively impact you is like intuition. Like intuition's a foggy thing. It's not a clear, logical thing, but you're gaining insight somehow, or maybe you're very empathetic, like you're feeling other people's energy more. And with Mercury, that's feeding into your ideas. It's feeding into the way that you process the world.
Okay.
So you're very intuitive. You're picking up on details around you, very imaginative. I'm seeing a lot of imagination and kind of pushing the boundaries of what is possible.
Cool.
The last thing I noticed in this chart is if we have the birth time correct, Black Moon Lilith is conjunct the ascendant.
Oh my God, that sounds like the end of any like apocalyptic book.
Yes, I know. Run, Black Moon Lilith.
This conjuncts the ascendant.
Yes.
That's someone without eyes, like in a room of a great temple, stating that out to like a hero.
Oh
somewhere.
my gosh. Yeah. Like the Oracle at Delphi or something.
Totally. Or like the beginning of Princess Mononoke.
Oh yeah,
You know,
exactly.
like,
go now.
go
Evil
now.
is spreading in the world.
Black Moon Lilith, it conjuncts the ascendant. You must stop the great pig.
Yes, exactly. Fun fact, that movie is why this is called Unclouded Eye.
Really?
Yeah, it comes from Princess Mononoke to see with eyes unclouded.
I got the chills just now.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's where it comes from. One of my favorite movies.
Dual tattoos?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. It's decided.
Okay. So Black Moon Lilith conjunct the ascendant. This shows me that this person's rebellious. They're operating a little like, so I said that they're not ostracized from society. That's true, but they're also pushing the envelope. There's something that is very experimental, or like, you know, which makes sense if you're talking about radiation, right? That's something that maybe, I don't know exactly how they're tied in, but it does seem like they're pushing the boundaries of what people have done. And there's like kind of like this you can't tell me no type of energy with that. And I don't know if they're male or female, but there is this sort of like feminine power with this placement. So even if this person is male, you would be seeing that like in how they interact with women in their lives, or maybe like in kind of that energy that they invoke in themselves. It's kind of like dark and away from like tradition.
Yes, I think the you can't tell me no is such an important aspect for this person.
We see it in Black Moon Lilith. We see it in the sun opposite Pluto as well. You can't tell me no.
I'm glad that was there for them because we really needed this work that they did.
Okay. Can you tell me who it is?
This is Marie Curie.
Wow, what an icon. Oh my gosh.
She's an icon, right? That's why I wanted to do this.
That makes perfect sense. Black Moon Lilith. Yeah, like there weren't very few female scientists back then.
Yeah, like no one's going to listen to a woman back then. Like the fact that
she's just like, I don't care.
Incredible when I was reading about her.
Okay, tell me.
Okay, let's dive into this part. Let's see the incredible Marie Curie. So her real name or her birth name was Maria Sklodowska, and she was born in Poland. She's the youngest of 5 children at a time of political upheaval in the country, which is crucial for her upbringing. So her family had lost their property and fortunes due to their involvement in the Polish uprisings against Russia. And so the children's education then relied really heavily on their father, who was a teacher. So after Russia eliminated the allowance of laboratory studies from Polish schools, it was Marie's father who just wasn't going to let that happen. So he brought home equipment to teach his children science at their house. And so Marie loved this. And even though they didn't have funding for their education, she scrambled to learn what she could when she could. Like that is a key for her. And I think I heard some of that type of stuff in your reading.
Yep. Passion, curiosity, imagination.
So she's working as a governess in studying in private to just kind of make things make ends meet. And she's finally able to save enough money to move to Paris to live with her sister in 1891. She immediately enrolls in studies of physics, chemistry, and math at the University of Paris. And she focuses all of her energy on just learning. Like this is the only thing that she cares about is being an educated woman. So I read a little snippet from her biography where someone said that she was so focused on her opportunity to learn, she often forgot to eat, but was sustained by knowledge instead. Like what a quote.
Wow. Yeah. I mean that kite pattern, you're like just so hungry for knowledge. You're just so passionate, especially with the sun and the moon trining Uranus. It's like your curiosity and your imagination is just guiding.
She just had to be guided by that and had to know. She was so focused on this that she became a tutor at night so she could make money by also staying on topic with what she was really interested in while she was studying all day. And so it's around this time that she takes up tutoring that she meets a man, and they have the same drive and instincts. And this is Pierre Curie. I think this is so cute.
Venus is conjunct the midheaven and Saturn, so relationship that's tied in with like legacy and work. And
they were so tied. Like this is so cute learning about them together that they didn't fall in love at first, but they fall in love through their work. And so they get married on July 26, 1895. And this is interesting that she gets married wearing a dark blue outfit instead of a wedding gown, because she wanted that outfit or whatever that she wore on her wedding day. She ended up wearing it to the lab for years to come because it was like covered her whole body and it was like a good material type of thing. So like her lab coat was her wedding gown.
That's amazing.
I know. So it's we're gonna flash forward to 1895, and the Röntgen and Becquerel released their findings about X-rays and beyond, like I had mentioned earlier. And so the Curies are the ones that like read these reports and were like, this is just scratching the surface. So they dive in because Marie stouts the claim that the phenomena doesn't come from molecular interaction, which is what the two people I just mentioned thought. She thinks it goes deeper. So she has a belief against the laws at the time, which stated that the atom cannot degrade, nor can it ever be separated. And she said, no, actually the opposite. It degrades over time on its own. And yes, it can be separated. And that gets into Oppenheimer much later, where he actually forcibly separates the atom.
Yeah.
But with Marie Curie, she basically decided that she wanted to prove that there was a phenomenon happening and that eventually it would be called radiation. So she sets up work in what they called the science shed, which was a repurposed medical dissection laboratory that had no ventilation and it was not waterproof.
Oh, no.
And again, it sets up for the grisly end, right? Which I think we all know is that she's working with intensely radioactive isotopes for her entire life.
And with no protection, really.
No,
Except for her wedding dress.
In her wedding dress. That's right. That's right.
Oh.
But these people are cranking, like while they're healthy. So it's between 1898 and 1902. Her and her husband published 32 different scientific papers. And in these papers is when Marie Curie herself coins the terms radioactivity.
Wow.
I think she's so cool because a woman named it.
That's amazing.
It's so great. They also discover radium, and she pushes it further to find out that radium has a unique ability to kill tumors in human cells. So already not just discovering it, but applying it. Cool. And so it's 1903 that her and her husband win the third ever Nobel Prize, and this one is for physics.
Wow.
So dipping into the love again. She's devastated in 1906 when this is just so unnecessary and so sad. But her husband is killed in a traffic accident. He gets run over by a stagecoach.
They only had 10 years together.
That was it. Just a really brief span. And she falls into depression almost immediately. However, her husband was about to be given a seat to the physics department at the University of Paris. And because of her contributions and despite of her gender, they award it to her instead.
Wow.
So, and she cranks at this point because she's now given resources to go.
Yeah. And I mean, what, if, she's just going to throw herself into her work even more.
Yeah. And, I don't want to put that on her, but from reading the stuff, her biography and whatnot, it seemed like without her husband, this was the only place where she felt connected to him still.
That makes a lot of, he probably would have wanted her to continue their work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've got some more facts for you about her. She worked in World War I, serving as an unshielded radiologist in field hospitals in the military. She would do x-rays because no one, there were 3 people on the planet that understood it as well as she did.
Wow.
So I thought that was cool. Another not so cool thing, because we know how it ends for her, but she would carry her test tubes with radioactive isotopes around in her pockets. And she thought they were rather nifty because they would glow in the dark. And so there's reports where she would keep them isotopes everywhere in her desk and her pockets just kicking around because, again,
nice little nightlight.
Yeah, we didn't know. We didn't have any idea that it was dangerous.
It just makes you wonder what stuff we have around us now that in 100 years we're going to be they were just touching that. They were using these cell phones or whatever it is,
Well, it's like finding out that floss has those forever chemicals in it, and it's cool, that's been in my mouth for 30 years,
right?
Yeah. Anyways, back to her. She's literally the reason why there are safety procedures around radiation now, because unfortunately, Marie Curie passes away at 66 from aplastic anemia due to the absolute amount of bone marrow damage that prolonged radiation did to her. So she died younger, but she still had a pretty intrepid life.
Older than I thought.
Yeah, same here. I thought it would be much younger.
She was in her 40s or something.
She needed to crank. She needed to get stuff done. But because of the amount of radiation that she exposed in her lifetime, I think most people who have heard of Marie Curie know that she herself is still very radioactive. Did you know that?
I think I remember hearing something about that, her body.
Her body is buried in a lead-lined coffin in the Pantheon in Paris right now, which is like a crypt. Her notebooks are in London, and they are under protective casing, and you can take them out, and they're right now, I think they're trying to figure out an AI way to scan through all of her notes safely.
Yeah.
Because it's so radioactive. And she worked a lot with radium-266, which has a half-life of about 1,600 years, which means that Marie Curie and all of her possessions will be radioactive until the year 3,500. And that is my story on Marie Curie and her exploits into radiation.
That is wild. So when did we learn exactly the dangers of radioactivity?
I think that started to become way more prevalent in, I can't remember the exact date, but have you heard of the Radium Girls before?
I've heard the name. I don't know what they are.
So that could be a really cool topic for us to do a deeper dive into, because it's something I've actually read the book about. They fascinate me. But radium would glow in the dark, like I mentioned. And so there was a radium watch factory that employed mostly women with their tiny little fine brushes. They would hand paint radium onto the faces of watches before, like, I think in the 90s we had Indiglo. Do you remember those Indiglo watches? You push the button and it would barely glow type of thing.
Yep.
Well, they had radium. And so it would glow at night, which was super useful for a watch. However, to get the points on the paintbrushes really, really thin and pointy, they would lick them. And so the radium case that the radium girls had against their company was also a really great lawsuit for protections in the United States overall, because the company was saying, basically trying to gaslight the women into poor life choices, and that's why they were dying. Meanwhile, I think it was almost total kill of all of the women who worked in there. Their teeth were falling out. They had bone marrow damage. They were wasting away. And some of the women who sued on this, like, they said that the only reason why they were staying alive as long as they were was because they wanted to see the case through.
That's horrible.
Yes. So I would say that was probably the first shock of radiation poisoning to
on a larger
our culture.
scale. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, that was a very fascinating topic. Thank you for bringing that info.
Yeah, I just wanted to go a little bit deeper on radiation, and see what was going on there and what people thought it was. Mostly because I think the Curies as scientists in general were so cool. I wanted to highlight them more than anything
Absolutely,
else.
Super interesting. Yeah, and I mean, what an icon Marie was. Yeah. So next week we're back to a little bit more of an active sky for sure. So.
Okay. And I got a super cool topic for you coming in next week, which I found on TikTok.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's good for some things.
Yeah. Well, I went further than TikTok on the research.
Yeah,
I think that's
of course.
important.
But that's like what kind of like alerted you to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And you know that you can find us on social media. We'll have the links in the description for this. And also you can join us on Patreon. I do a really deep dive every week into every single transit because I'm really only giving you the highlights here each week, but we're going to talk more about like moon phases and moon signs and every little thing that goes on we talk about on Patreon. So if you
Love it.
You want to do a deep dive with us, you can
find out more about the North Node, the Dragon's Head itself.
The Dragon's Head.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks, Ash. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a great week, everybody.
We'll see you next week. The Unclouded Eye stars Ashley Brooks and Ty Gowan. It's produced by Nick Nordfors. Music is by Ashley Dane Cecilia and Jay Karen, and our community manager is Aaron Cross. Art for Unclouded Eye is by Don Aquarius, and it is presented by Haunt Me Official on YouTube. You can follow Unclouded Eye on Instagram and TikTok at Unclouded Eye, and then on Patreon as Unclouded_Eye. Shout out to Victoria Ordinez and Michael Thorne this week. Thank you for being patrons.